Welcome back to the Cool Comic Show. I am very excited about today's episode of My Cool Books because we're going to be talking about my favorite character, a character very near and dear to me, very special to me, and one of the three pillars of the DC Universe Trinity, Wonder Woman. So specifically, we're going to talk about what I would consider her first great run of the modern era, and that is Wonder Woman by artist and writer George Perez. I have the Absolute Edition here. I'll talk a little bit about what that means. Let's go ahead and take a look. Okay, we're back on the brown on brown on brown. The lighting will fix itself in a second once I get rid of this gold slipcase. As I mentioned, we do have the Absolute Edition here, and what makes this an Absolute Edition is it's this oversized, big artwork, big book. However, it doesn't collect all the issues. So as a quick surprise for all of you that made it to this point of the video, I do have all three omnibuses, omnibus. I have all three volumes of his run. This collects all 62 issues plus a couple of the side issues here and there. As I said, there's 3 volumes. What makes this different from the Absolutes is these are thicker. Obviously they're not as big, but it collects the entire run in here. Because I'm such a big fan of the run and the importance of this, I had to get all 3s as well as the Absolute. But I wanted to show this off. Let's go ahead and go back to the Absolute. So I was talking a little bit earlier about how this is her first big run of the modern era. A little bit of background on how we got to this point. In the 80s, DC had this big crazy event called Crisis on Infinite Earths. Very complex, very crazy, very fun, but essentially what that event did was have a hard reset on the entire DC universe. It's essentially considered like the reset of the DC universe, so DC wanted to give some new origins to some of their flagship characters. Batman got his year 1 run, Superman got the Man of Steel run, Wonder Woman got this run by George Perez. And so, speaking of Crisis, George Perez was the artist on Crisis on Infinite Earths. He was also the artist on the New Teen Titans, which are some of my favorite books. I think a lot of people resonate with those characters. And so when the time came for Wonder Woman, he was brought on as the artist. They went through a couple of writers, but he ended up taking on the role of writer and artist on this book. And for any fans of Marvel out there, he was the artist for this little run in the 90s called Infinity Gauntlet, which may or may not be the inspiration for the second biggest movie in the world now. But yeah, he was the artist on that. Unfortunately, he did pass away earlier this year. I never got the chance to meet him, but from what everyone says, he was a very kind, very nice person. Fellow Hispanic, shout out to the Boricuas. Very big figure in the industry and all his other works as well. But rest in peace to you, George Perez. So let's go ahead and start taking a look. This is the slipcase. This is the iconic cover from issue number 1. You've probably seen this images plenty other places. We also have this image on the back as well. This is a gold slipcase, so you just slip it out. And we'll fix the lighting on this camera with this magic. Look at that. Specifically, they call it Gods and Mortals. But it's by George Perez here. I like this really cool look. I always like when books do this, when they have art on the hard board of it. You can see a lot of the iconic images from this run. This is one of the first splash pages that comes up. And so the reason why this run was so iconic is he introduced and reintroduced a lot of the attributes you would know now if you've seen the movies and shows and that kind of stuff. So here's the opening page. Again, story and pencils by George Perez. Wonder Woman created by William Moulton Marston. There is a movie called Professor Marston and the Wonder Woman. If you haven't seen that movie, it's essentially a biopic of Professor Marston. It talks about him coming up in the early 1900s. He created Wonder Woman while he was married, and him and his wife, they were essentially in a polyamorous relationship. Very fascinating movie. I don't know how accurate it is, but he did create Wonder Woman. In his own self-proclaimed words, he was a feminist. He was all about women's rights, and he helped create the character, or he created the character with the help of his wife and their live-in girlfriend. So very interesting, kind of how Wonder Woman came to be. But we're here to talk about George Perez's run. You can see here's 376 pages. Here is that art we were just looking at on the board. So George Perez is known for having a lot of characters on page, a lot of action, things happening, but making it look good, very, very distinct. You can kind of see a little bit of that here. And so I was talking earlier about how Wonder Woman is my favorite character. Growing up, I think a lot of people in my generation, we got familiar or introduced to a lot of DC characters through the Justice League animated show or the Batman animated show. And so while I was watching that, Wonder Woman always just came across as a character that was just super cool to me. I'm a kid. I was 8 or 9 years old, however old I was at the time. And I just always thought she was a cool character. She was keeping her own in fights with Superman, having her, one-to-one with Batman. It was just a fun time. And so as I got older and learned more about her, I think being a fan of DC Comics, I say this all the time, you kind of are a default fan of Batman because of how much they give him and the Bat family. But I started learning about Diana and everything with, you know, her background in Greek mythology. I'm a big fan of Greek mythology. I love the gods, the Olympians, everything like that. So when I finally got the chance to read this book, as I was mentioning earlier, he reintroduced a lot of her things you would know about her now, like Themyscira, Paradise Island, the Amazons, the Greek gods. And so in this run, there's a lot of discussion, there's a lot of appearances with the Greek gods and Wonder Woman talking with a lot of them. I like this design for Ares here. And so I will say this first part of the run is very dialogue heavy, very wordy. If you can see all this stuff kind of happening here on page, like I said, a lot of characters happening, all these panels, all these words. As the run goes on, kind of past what this absolute edition includes, it becomes not as wordy, but still pretty wordy for what it was. And this run just really defined her for the modern era. You know, Professor Marston created her in the 1940s. So for the next 3-4 decades, she had her story. She was all over the place. And after Crisis, they were like, all right, this is the Diana we want for the modern time. And it stuck. You know, a lot of people who have done Wonder Woman since then have kept a lot of her origins from this book or retold it in a certain way, but they always go back to, this is her defining character. This is who she is as a character. Quick little Hermes hangout here. But yeah, going back to what I was saying, like, it's with Diana, with Wonder Woman, she's such a cool character. It's the way that she's able to be a warrior, but be compassionate, be caring, show you what it means to love yourself, to love others. She's just so complex. She's so great. And sure, Batman is great for what he does. Superman is great, but I don't know what it is. Something about Wonder Woman just always kind of stuck with me. And so with this run, you get to find yourself with Steve Trevor, with Etta Candy. Again, if you've seen the movies or any other adaptations, a lot of the characters or how they are now came from this run. But yeah, without going through too many spoilers, you know, the Greek gods are here being weird as always. If you're a fan of the Greek gods, you know, like I am, you'll kind of know what I mean by that. Oh, another interesting thing too. So when Diana first leaves the island and she, you know, meets people on the mainland, I guess if you want to call it, she doesn't speak English. It's whenever you read a comic book, if they have dialogue where it's kind of like brackets, that means the character's not speaking English. So that's not something they've really done in adaptations, but just a fun little thing that's in the book that you'll only get in a book versus TV or movies. Of course, you know, you'll get some times where she talks about other characters in the DC universe. This is very George Perez-like with the way these characters look. I mean, look at Beast Boy. That's new Teen Titans Beast Boy if I've ever seen one. And of course, you know, you get Cheetah in here looking crazy, looking fierce. Honestly, Barbara and Diana's relationship, you know, Cheetah, Wonder Woman, it's one of my favorites. It's kind of the way it's been kind of defined even throughout all these years of they were friends and then Cheetah kind of becomes Cheetah, and the way Diana feels like she failed her as a friend. And it's very nice. It's very complex, very compelling. Here you get a look at the Minotaur, or the bull. So there's that Wonder Woman game coming out that got announced a couple years ago. I hope in that game we get a level where you go into the maze and have to like go fight the bull at the end. I think it'd be a lot of fun. And the way Diana looks in this era, like the 80s, even going into the 90s, just like the way her hair is drawn, like blue, but it's black. And I love this look for her. Also, like I was saying earlier, this only collects part of his run. The entire run of his can be read in the omnibuses I showed earlier. There are 3 volumes of these. Definitely recommend. Let's check out some of the cover gallery. Yeah, Wonder Woman's just a cool character, dude. I think like her relationships with so many characters in the DC universe, the way that she is respected in the DC universe and also in our real world, she's my favorite, man. The Bat family, you know, they're a whole separate tier. Again, being a DC fan, you're kind of just defaulted being a Bat family member. Dick Grayson, best Robin for me, Nightwing. But Wonder Woman just stands out on her own. She's so iconic, so many great stories, so many fun times. She's a fierce warrior, just so cool. Oh, another cool thing here too, they included some of her like old covers, so like before his run, you know, between the 40s and 80s, basically. There's some cool bio information here about her. So I know for a while people were calling it Paradise Island and Themyscira. I want you guys to let me know, what do you normally refer to it as? I kind of go back and forth sometimes. I think when I was first introduced to the character, it was known as Paradise Island, and they're kind of switching to Themyscira. It's a fun little thing. All the original black and white for her covers. Just this art, man, as you guys saw, I was going through the books. It's so distinct. It stands out. It's like, you know, it's from this era, but it just looks good. It looks great. An amazing book, an amazing run. Definitely something I recommend to everybody. She also had some fun stuff in the 90s. She was involved in some DC events the last 15, 20 years that were very, very iconic. But we'll save those for another video. So that was Wonder Woman by George Perez. Like I said, very important character to me. If you like this video, please consider subscribing and liking the video. We do these type of book reviews every week. We do TV show reactions, movie reactions, and just general comic book industry discussion. Thank you guys for watching the video, and we'll see you next time.